on our birthday, and we can find heaven if we do it together. So won't you let us get it?
MAC Cosmetics is that brand everyone thinks they know, but once you really get into it, you realize why it's still standing after all of these years. It started as a makeup line for professional artists, and you can feel that in the formulas. Everything is pigmented, intentional, and meant to actually show up on real skin, not just under studio lights. It's not about looking safe or watered down. MAC has always leaned into boldness, artistry, and self-expression without needing permission. What I love most is how unapologetically inclusive it's been from early on. Before diversity became a marketing buzzword, MAC was already putting people of every shade, gender expression, and aesthetic at the center. The shade range wasn't an afterthought, it was the point. Walking into a MAC store feels like walking into a creative space, not a beauty counter where someone's judging your face. The products themselves are reliable in a way that builds trust. Lipsticks that actually last, foundations that don't disappear by noon, eyeshadows that blend but still hit. There's a reason makeup artists still keep MAC staples in their kits no matter how many new brands pop up. Trends come and go, but MAC feels rooted in craft. It's not trying to be clean girl or hyper luxury or viral every 5 seconds. It's just solid, expressive makeup that lets people show up as exactly who they are, whether that's soft, dramatic, experimental, or all of the above. That's why it's lasted. Who was the founder? MAC Cosmetics was founded by two guys named Frank Toscan and Frank Angelo. And honestly, that already tells you a lot about why the brand feels the way it does. Frank Toscan was a photographer and makeup artist, and Frank Angelo owned a beauty salon in Toronto. Back in the early 1980s, Toscan was frustrated because makeup just didn't show up well on camera. Everything looked flat, ashy, or disappeared under studio lights. So instead of complaining forever, he started making his own makeup in his kitchen. Literally mixing pigments, testing formulas, and figuring out what actually worked for real faces under harsh lighting. Frank Angelo saw what Toscan was doing and immediately understood the potential. Angelo wasn't just creative, he was strategic. He knew how to turn an idea into a business. Together they launched MAC in 1984, originally selling products straight to makeup artists, models, and photographers. No fancy counters, no mass marketing. It was a word of mouth, artist to artist. If you knew, you knew. And that's why MAC developed this almost underground credibility early on. It was built for professionals first, not trends. What really set them apart, though, was how intentional they were about inclusivity. This wasn't performative. Toscan and Angelo were both gay men at a time when the beauty industry was still very conservative and closed off. They created MAC as a space where outsiders, artists, queer people, drag performers, and people of color were not only welcome but centered. Their famous slogan, all ages, all races, all genders, wasn't a rebrand. It was baked into the company from day one. One of the most defining moments of the brand came in the 1990s with the Viva Glam campaign. MAC committed 100% of the proceeds from Viva Glam lipsticks to HIV and AIDS charities. That was radical at the time. No portion of profits, no vague donations, every dollar. It wasn't just marketing, it was personal. The founders were deeply affected by the AIDS crisis, especially within their community, and they used the brand as a tool to give back in a real way. Sadly, Frank Angelo passed away in 1997, and Frank Toscan later sold his stake in the company. MAC eventually became part of Estee Lauder, but the DNA they built never fully disappeared. The bold colors, the artistry, the focus on real people instead of perfection, that all comes from those two Franks mixing makeup in a kitchen and deciding the industry needed something better. MAC exists because two friends saw a gap, trusted their instincts, and refused to water themselves down, and that's why it still feels different. Why was it created? MAC Cosmetics was created because the makeup that existed at the time simply wasn't doing its job. In the early 1980s, Frank Toscan was working as a photographer and makeup artist, and he kept running into the same problem. Makeup looked terrible on camera. Colors faded under studio lights, skin tones went flat or ashy, and there wasn't enough pigment to actually define faces. The products on the market were made for everyday wear, not for photography, film, or artistry. So instead of settling, Toscan started creating his own formulas, highly pigmented, matte, and buildable, specifically for professional use. The goal wasn't beauty trends or mass appeal, it was function. Makeup that could handle bright lights, long hours, sweat, and movement while still looking intentional and strong. When Frank Angelo came in, the vision expanded. They didn't just want better makeup, they wanted a brand that served people the industry ignored. Makeup was built for artists, performers, queer communities, people of color, and anyone who didn't fit the polished beauty standard of the time. It was meant to be expressive, inclusive, and bold by default. At its core, MAC was created to solve a problem and make space, better products for real faces, and a brand culture that didn't ask people to shrink themselves to belong. The aesthetic of the MAC girl. The MAC girl aesthetic is confident without being loud, but never apologetic. It's not about looking pretty in a traditional polished way, it's about presence. A MAC girl knows her face and uses makeup as a tool, not a mask. The look can be soft or dramatic, but there's always intention behind it. Even a bare beat feels deliberate, like every product was chosen for a reason. She's experimental. At a red lip at 9 a.m.? Why not? Graphic liner on a random Tuesday? Absolutely. The MAC girl isn't chasing trends just because they're viral. She pulls from artistry, culture, and mood. There's a sense of ease with boldness. Color doesn't wear her, she wears it. Skin looks like skin, but elevated. Brows aren't overdone, contour isn't cartoonish, and nothing feels like it's trying too hard to impress. What really defines the aesthetic is inclusivity and individuality. There isn't one face, one body, or one vibe. A MAC girl can be a soft glam minimalist, a full beat artist, a punk creative, a drag performer, or someone who switches this up daily. The common thread is self-awareness and self-trust. She knows what works for her and doesn't need permission to show up that way. She's also slightly a rebellious edge. Not reckless, but still self-possessed. The MAC girl doesn't dilute herself to be more palatable. She understands makeup as an art, as armor, and sometimes as play. It's expressive but grounded, bold but wearable. At the end of the day, the MAC girl aesthetic isn't about copying a look, it's about energy. It says, I know who I am and I'm not here to blend in. What was the most notable moments in the makeup industry? MAC has several standout moments that genuinely shifted the makeup industry, not just followed it. One of the earliest and most professional impact was how MAC centered professional makeup artists before influencer culture even existed. By building the brand for artists first, MAC set a new standard for pigmentation, shade range, and performance that many brands later copied. MAC also revolutionized inclusivity long before it became industry language. Their logo, all ages, all races, all genders, wasn't a campaign, it was operational. MAC counters hired diverse artists, stocked deep shades consistently, and showcased real people, including drag queens and non-traditional models when they were still considered risky. The brand also became famous for its iconic collaborations from artists and designers to pop culture figures, turning limited edition collections into cultural moments, not just product drops. MAC Ruby Roo, Studio Fix, and lip gloss became industry staples that influenced formulas across the market. Together, these moments cemented MAC as a brand that shaped the industry values, not just its trend, proving makeup could be artistic, inclusive, and impactful at the same time. What was the most controversial moment in the makeup industry? If we're talking about one of the most controversial moments in the makeup industry, a big one that really shook the industry was MAC launching the Viva Glam campaign in 1994 with RuPaul as the face. At the time, this was wildly controversial. RuPaul was a drag queen, openly gender non-conforming, fronting a major cosmetic campaign when most beauty ads were still obsessed with ultra-feminine, quiet, model-perfect women. Lots of retailers were uncomfortable. Some consumers were openly hostile, and there was real backlash. Brands just did not do that back then. Drag was not mainstream, queer visibility wasn't celebrated, and HIV/AIDS was heavily stigmatized. On top of that, MAC announced that 100% of Viva Glam proceeds would go to HIV/AIDS charities, not a percentage of it, all of it. That made people nervous. Investors, retailers, even other beauty brands thought it was too political, too risky, and bad for business. Some believe associating makeup with AIDS activism would hurt sales. Instead, it did the opposite. Viva Glam became iconic. RuPaul became historic as the first drag queen to front a major beauty campaign, and MAC permanently changed what representation in beauty could look like. What was once seen as too much is now referenced as a turning point. So yeah, controversial, uncomfortable, risky, but it forced the industry to grow up, and that's why it still gets talked about decades later. The peak time, and how the brand shaped the beauty industry in the 2010 to 2016 era. MAC's peak in the 2010-2016 era was really about dominance and cultural authority. This was a period where MAC wasn't just popular, it was a standard. If a product was good, people compared it to MAC. If a brand wanted credibility, they tried to position themselves near MAC's level of artistry and inclusivity. During this time, MAC completely shaped what full glam and professional makeup looked like. Studio Fix Fluid, Pro Longwear Concealer, Ruby Root, Lip Glass, and the Materialized line were everywhere, on YouTube, backstage, in kits, and at the counters. This was the rise of beauty YouTube, and MAC benefited from it without chasing it. Influencers used MAC because it worked, not because it was paying them. That mattered. MAC also helped normalize bold makeup as everyday wear. Heavy contour, matte lips, dramatic lashes, and statement eyes became mainstream looks, not just runway or stage makeup. The brand validated makeup as a skill and craft, not just enhancement. Going to a MAC counter felt like booking a mini lesson with a real artist, which raised consumer expectations across the entire industry. Another huge impact was representation. Between 2010 and 2016, MAC consistently hired diverse artists, featured drag performers, and stocked deep shades before brands were publicly pressured to do so. It quietly set a baseline others later scrambled to meet. By the end of this era, newer brands were gaining traction, but MAC had already laid the foundation. It shaped how people shopped for makeup, how artists were represented, and how bold self-expression became normal. That period is why MAC is still referenced even when trends shift. Recent makeup collabs. Here are some of MAC's Cosmetics' most recent and buzzworthy makeup collaborations and partnerships. MAC and Taylor Momsen, released in 2025. MAC teamed up with singer-actress Taylor Momsen to create a gritty, rock-inspired look for a 2025 release of a rock version of Where Are You Christmas, in celebration of the Grinch anniversary. The collab linked into smoky eyes, bold lips, and a mix of grunge with holiday sparkle using MAC staples like Studio Fix and Pro Longwear Paint Pop. MAC and Emixio. This is a Gen Z and focused makeup collab featuring lip combos that channel main character energy, blending playful glossy naturals with bold earthier tones. It's all about youthful expression and fun with color. Nicola Formici and Nico Panda for MAC. The designer Nicola Formici created a vibrant MAC Nico Panda collection, playful, gender fluid, and rooted in streetwear culture, reflecting the next generation's take on beauty. JT and Alex Kusani's lip kits. TikTok stars JT and Alex Kusani feature signature lip kits with MAC in 2020-25. Featuring a glossy pink and a sun-kissed neutral, blending social media-inspired style with classic MAC quality. MAC and Mary J. Blige Love Me Lipstick Collection. MAC collaborated with Mary J. Blige on the limited edition lipstick line, focusing on universally flattering nudes and shades designed with her personal style in mind. MAC brand ambassadors. While not product drops per se, MAC's creative partnerships with artists like Chappelle Roan, named Global Brand Ambassador for 2026, and K-pop star Ella, reflect how the brand collaborates deeply with cultural figures to shape campaigns and new product narratives. These collabs show MAC evolving beyond traditional makeup launches and trying beauty to music, fashion, and social media personalities and cultural moments. Overall, at the end of the day, MAC's history is really the story of a brand that never tried to shrink itself to fit the industry. It forced the industry to expand instead. What started in a Toronto kitchen was a practical solution for artists turned into a global beauty authority without losing its edge. MAC didn't begin with perfection or luxury fantasy. It began with function, pigment, and real people. That foundation is why it's lasted. Over the decades, MAC consistently showed that makeup could be art, activism, and everyday wear all at once. It normalized bold color, professional grade formulas, and the idea that makeup belongs to everyone, not just a narrow version of beauty. From Viva Glam and HIV/AIDS advocacy to centering drag, queer culture, and deep skin tones long before it was safe, MAC made decisions that were risky in the moment but iconic in hindsight. In the 2010s, it became the blueprint, shaping how consumers shopped, how artists were respected, and how full glam entered the mainstream. Even as trends shifted and newer brands rose through social media, MAC's influence stayed embedded in the industry. Most brands today are still responding to standards MAC helped set. Now, MAC exists in a more crowded, fast-moving beauty world, but its legacy carries weight. It's not just nostalgia, it's credibility. MAC represents confidence, craft, and self-expression without apology. And that's why no matter how beauty evolves, MAC is always part of the conversation. And that's my take on the rise of MAC Cosmetics. If you like this video, please don't forget to comment, subscribe, your favorite products from MAC that you've used, how you feel that MAC has impacted the beauty industry. And I'll see you in my next one. Mwah.